measures specific to Section 6.
And we are back. We will just go straight into the legislature because they're live already.
I'd like to yield.
Yes, Madam Speaker. And I welcome the question. I actually have contemplated that because, as I said earlier in my description of the bill, we have an entire chapter in the Guam Code that describes how all federal funds are subject to appropriation by the legislature. And several provisions in that chapter, describe why, how, and they very much try to control federal funds. In section 22301, there is a comment by the compiler that refers to the Wong case and describes that Congress can make appropriations directly to the government of Guam, where these appropriations or grants completely fund a specific purpose without the need of local funding, and where the appropriations or grant does not provide for local legislative control, there's no authority. So that's why I said earlier, Madam Speaker, it depends on how the funds are given. And for example, right now we are waiting to see how the funds are given in most instances. And so that's why, yes, we are contemplating, and I said, if we are able, then I think that the legislature should preserve that prerogative. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Chalabi. Senator Lee, does that answer your inquiry?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the retiring speaker for her response. So I just want to complete the section that had been cited previously. Where these appropriations or grants completely fund a specific purpose without the need of local funding, and in this example, we can, take into consideration the CARES Act, and where the appropriation or grant does not provide for local legislative control, there is no authority for the Guam legislature to assume the responsibility for reappropriating these funds. And so, Madam Speaker, I think that's pretty clear, and I just want to be sure that as we move forward with the consideration for this bill, and again, I support this measure, but Section 6 in and itself needs to be, I think, looked at a little bit more thoroughly as it relates to this existing judgment. And thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Lee. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Vice Speaker, can you take the podium a minute, please?
Speaker Barnes, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker. I do have a question for the author, if I may.
Senator Tsulahi.
This bill on Section A8 allows the public auditor to conduct audits, and part of the federal packages allow for stimulus payments to residents. And if the Office of Public Accountability is to audit these payments and the eligibility of recipients who receive these stimulus payments, the it's been noted that the OPA cannot access individual tax returns and revenue and taxation per the federal statute could refuse auditors the ability to verify and review tax returns for 2018. So given that stimulus payments are the biggest chunk of the federal aid, is there any way we can further do accountability? And I'm hoping that she could help me answer that inquiry.
Senator Terlahi, do you yield?
I do, but could the speaker just repeat the question? I'm not sure I understand exactly.
Sure. The bill allows for the public auditor to conduct audits, and part of the federal package just allows for the stimulus payments to the residents that qualify. If the OPA is to audit these payments and the eligibility of recipients who receive these stimulus payments, the OPA cannot access individual tax returns. Per the federal statute, Revenue Tax could refuse the auditor's ability to verify and review tax returns for 2018. And given the stimulus payments are the biggest chunk of the federal aid, is there any way we can further the accountability? So I'm trying to make sure that the accountability is there, knowing that the OPA, based on the Privacy Act, that the OPA, how can the OPA facilitate this moving forward?
Senator Terlahi, do you yield?
Sure, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the question from our speaker. It's been a long going kind of battle between auditors and revenue and taxation as to access to taxpayer information. So as it stands now, they are not allowed access to taxpayer-specific information. So the speaker's correct. I doubt that the auditor is going to be able to audit, who got what as far as taxpayers. However, they will be able to audit whether they were issued in checks of, $1,200 versus whatever other amounts they might have been issued in. And if any part of that money was spent outside of paying taxpayers and paying, other, for programming or other things, and in accordance with whatever memorandums we might see. So I think that would be their parameters to compare whether the parameters in the memorandums or whatever, whether they approve. For example, our Director of Revenue and Taxation's already submitted her request for approval. If they approve that, that would lay out exactly the parameters. I think more it's the program management side of those funds versus, taxpayer identities that I would hope the auditor would concentrate on.
Speaker Barnes.
Madam Speaker, and I just want to thank the author of this legislation and the efforts of moving and facilitating this forward. I do support the intent of this bill for accountability and transparency, and I just wanted to make sure that if the OPA is afforded that opportunity and the provisions of Section 8, that again, the outlook for that is seeing how that can be accessed. So I just want to say thank you for that, and I just wanted that to be noted on the record, and I appreciate you giving me the time to ask the inquiry.
Thank you, Speaker Barnes. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the main motion? Senator Terlahi, you're welcome to close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleagues for their comments and especially the questions on the bill. And I realize that, the bill primarily, it's intended to facilitate these programs. These are brand new programs, not existing in our government at this time. The bill is intended to remove whatever barriers there might be to implementing these swiftly. It's also intended, as the previous speaker said, to accommodate transparency and, of course, accountability. And I understand that federal programs have accountability built into them, hopefully, and it's just to assist that and to ensure that the legislature receives, reports as necessary. some of these we might find will allow us to further adjust our budgets, further accommodate these programs within our services provided by these agencies, which we have oversight of. And I know that the governors, joined together to lobby very heavily that they would be in control of these federal funds. And so it might end up that they do have primarily control of these federal funds. And I don't think there's anything in this bill that impedes that. I think, as one of the previous speakers from Santa Rita said, this is, the details will be spelled out, hopefully, in these memorandums, and we will at least be able to see what kind of arrangement they made for Guam promptly, and that we will then be able to ensure that it's being carried out that way. Everybody is interested in the same thing. It's just to get that aid out to the people that it's supposed to go to as quickly as possible. So by this bill, we remove some of the AAA, we remove whatever local statutes might be conflicting with the federal aid packages, hopefully. And so I'm hoping that it's going to facilitate, Madam Speaker. I think with our revenues being drastically reduced based on this crisis, we will have this federal stimulus is going to play a huge, huge part in fiscal year 2020. I mean, for sure. It can't be denied, Madam Speaker, that all of our fiscal year 2020 budgeting has pretty much been, dismissed at this point, and we're going to have to start from scratch. So we need to know as much as we can about every single dime that is going to be spent under these programs. With that said, again, I thank my colleagues for their support. I hope that they will support this bill. And I would like to just move, Madam Speaker, if I could add Senator Nelson, the Vice Speaker Nelson, Senator Josan Augustine, Senator Mary Torres, and all other senators as sponsor.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to move the bill to the third reading. As a substitute.
On that motion, are there any objections? Seeing none? Motion carries. Thank you, Senator Therese. Colleagues, next on the agenda is Bill 324-35 COR. Senator Mary Torres, I will recognize you at this time.
Sidus Maasi, I move to place into the third reading file Bill number 324-35 COR, introduced by myself and Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, which is an act to suspend the 2% general fund deposit requirement as mandated by Section 22904, Article 9, Chapter 22 of Title 5 Guam Code Annotated for fiscal year 2020. And I wish to speak on the measure further.
On that motion, please proceed.
Madam Speaker, the intent behind Bill number 324 is rather straightforward. It suspends the government of Guam's requirement to deposit monies into the rainy day fund for fiscal year 2020, granting the governor greater flexibility during this public health emergency. As my colleagues are aware, the economic impact of the 2019 novel coronavirus will inevitably result in a decline in revenues collected for the general fund. This will likely inhibit the government of Guam's ability to meet its adopted revenue levels for fiscal year 2020. That said, it is still a requirement under Guam law that 2% of the total revenues projected for the general fund be deposited into the rainy day fund for each fiscal year. Moreover, under this section, once monies are deposited into the rainy day fund, it would still take legislative authority for the governor to expend the money from the fund, even in cases of emergency. Madam Speaker, I think we can all agree that we are in the midst of an uncertain time with no clear idea of the extent and duration of this pandemic. And given these circumstances, I believe suspending this requirement will give our governor the flexibility she needs and allow her to instead direct those revenues towards Guam's current crisis in the event actual revenues are collected. So I ask my colleagues to please join me and my co-sponsor in support of this important measure at this time. Jesus Masi.
Gwen Bovetsu, Senator Torres. Anyone else on the main motion?
Before I proceed, may I I would like to make a motion, and I believe it was uploaded by the clerks, to add a new section 3 to read, "Nothing herein shall prevent Imagahagan Guahan from making such deposits into the rainy day fund as she deems fit." So in other words, Madam Speaker, if the governor desires to deposit because circumstances warrant, then that will be her prerogative. But as the first course, we will, suspend the requirement.
On that motion, is there anyone wishing to speak on it? If Senator Joseph Augustine, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I rise in support of the bill. The author it's just perfect to just suspend the rainy day fund so we can take care of whatever emergencies, and if there's a desire to spend the money that they send the request to us and we appropriate the funds accordingly. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome. Anyone else on the amendment? Senator Teresa Lai, you are recognized.
On the amendment or the bill?
On the
Oh,
amendment.
sorry, that's okay.
No. Anyone else wishing to speak on the amendment? Are there any objections? No, hearing or seeing no objections, motion carries. On the main motion, Senator Teresa, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand in support of this bill. It would allow the governor to spend any monies in the rainy day fund. And as we know, it was only this fiscal year, Madam Speaker, where the governor actually requested that the legislature amend the law that was requiring a 2% deposit, or 2% set aside for deficit reduction, and instead put that into a rainy day fund. And as you know, we had Director Byrne from the Department of Administration here recently, maybe a month ago, and he stated for us that although our revenue projections were looking well prior to this crisis, of course, that there were no deposits yet into that rainy day fund. But I appreciate the flexibility that we are giving the governor here again, Madam Speaker, and I think with the amendment, it's even better that it will allow her to use any money that might go to the rainy day fund or continue to deposit into the rainy day fund. So I'd like to thank the sponsors. Sizus Masi, Madam Speaker.
Went to Senator Terlai. Anyone else on the main motion? Anyone else? Minority Leader, you are recognized.
Sijus Masui, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I too rise in support of this amendment. It was actually on March 11th when we had Director Burns in here to discuss the stimulus fund bill. And through the Committee of the Whole, it was brought to our attention, like the previous speaker, good speaker had mentioned, that nothing has been deposited up to this time. Expecting $13.2 million, I don't think we're going to be able to expect that kind of money right now. And I mean, even now, before the crisis happened, they weren't even able to put any money in there, and that was already the first quarter. If I'm not mistaken, I think the first quarter should have been so far about $5.2 million that went into this rainy day fund. So it's obvious, even before the crisis, we have an issue. So you can imagine now what it's going to be like now for the finances of this government of Guam. So I appreciate this amendment, this legislation. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity.
You're very welcome, Minority Leader. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, do you want to speak? Senator Torres, you may close.
I want to express my sidus ma'asi to everybody for their support of this bill. And as a good sense measure, I'd like to make a motion to add all of my colleagues to the bill as co-sponsors. Thank
On
you.
that motion, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none? Motion carries. Senator Torres?
Nothing further.
For history, I guess, so that their names appear on the piece of paper.
Are you serious?
For
But it appears on the piece of paper anyway because it shows that they're vote.
that's a separate piece of paper. I'm not
this-
lying.
Wow.
It's so like when they run for governor or lieutenant governor, whatever.
Oh,
they're
I
able to say,
co-sponsored
yeah,
this and I co-sponsored that.
I did this to help the
People of Guam.
coronavirus
Oh, okay,
emergency.
okay, I get it.
So,
is
the funny
amazing.
thing about this bill by Senator Mary Torres is it's actually one of the more responsible pieces of legislation that you would think that the legislature should do. And it was right up their alley. It's about the funding levels in the government of Guam. And it kind of goes to what we were saying about, but the legislature just needs to cut the budget. Though that's not what it did, it does affect the Gov Guam budget. And I just think it's the funniest thing that only like 3 senators total spoke on it. And no one was rushing to raise their hands. And I have
I
a
just
feeling it
think-
has a lot to do with some senators don't even understand it.
Right, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, we can go back to listening to the session.
That is fun. This is too much. Or not enough.
And on line 4, we are crossing out the word not. And then at the end of the paragraph, we are including COVID-19 hazardous pay shall be calculated and paid based on the regular rate of the employee.
On that amendment by Vice Speaker Nelson, are there anyone wishing to speak on the amendment? Minority Leader, you are recognized.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, are we did we go into motions to bring the bill back from the
No.
voting file?
No, Minority Leader, these bills were put down at the bottom of the agenda. We are now at that. We are back to the bill number 326, and that's where we're at right now. Do you wish to speak on that? On the amendment as proffered by Vice Speaker Senator Perez, I will recognize you at this time
Thank
on
you,
the
ma'am.
amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just don't see the amendment. If I could just have a quick recess to find it.
We'll take a moment's recess.
So I think, and I'm sorry that we missed the first part of what Selena Nelson did. I think they resurrected the hazard pay bill.
It is an act to add a new section 32120.1, Division 2, Chapter 32 of Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, and add a new section 63507, Article 5, Chapter 63 of Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to specifying hazard pay recipients in light of COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, maybe this is another hazard pay bill. Mm-hmm. Is it?
Remember, they were saying you need to add this one and this one when the bill actually says all law enforcement. When you're law enforcement, you take an oath. That's what considers you a law enforcement officer, right?
Who's the authors on these?
Selena and Amanda. Remember that
So there's
Thursday?
7 authors.
They were just, yeah. Remember that day they're like, can you add this and then minus this and remember Thursday?
Yeah, no, what I'm wondering is what makes this different from Bill 319? Do you see 319 on the agenda in the beginning?
No. 他在
So is that the very first one, the one that you're seeing, 326?
Yeah.
So then this is the one, right? I'm sorry, let me just open this. It's gonna come off of the session for just a second, but let me just open that bill. Huh. It is. So Chelo, you're right. This is the bill that they did send into the voting file. And we did a story on Saturday about how they made an amendment that will get rid of emergency pay. And now Vice Speaker Nelson has brought the bill back from the voting file and is changing that section again. Oh.
What?
Well, maybe Vice Speaker Nelson's going to say it was a mistake, that she was off by one word. But it used to say, after Thursday, after they made their whatever, it says, notwithstanding any provision of law, rule, or regulation, or executive order, the provisions of the DOA personnel rules and regulations authorizing payment at double the regular rate of pay shall not apply in addition to the COVID-19 public health emergency and shall not be extended to employees eligible for COVID-19 hazardous pay. It says shall not. That's what it said after Thursday when they made that amendment. Today, they're removing the words not. So actually, now, wow. So now they're going to make sure, they're going to, I guess, reinforce in the law that for this specific COVID-19 public health emergency, the employees are going to get double pay plus hazard pay that will be calculated at the regular rate. So
Everybody.
everyone who works the emergency,
Yeah.
not every GovGuam employee.
So I know, not the ones that are staying home. I'm talking
Yeah.
about our cashiers or our intake people at GMH.
That's what it's supposed to be. Now, remember they did the list, and remember Therese Flahi was saying, I don't know why there's a list, because now we might end up leaving people out.
Yeah.
So that's the danger when they made that list, is now
Well,
it's up
if
to the
I was
interpretation
there
of DOA.
accepting people at the registrar's office at GMH,
You put your front
you
line.
better, I am frontline, you are coughing in front of me, and we have to touch the same pen, and I
Yeah.
am passing paperwork to you, and you are passing paperwork to me, so I better be getting paid double pay.
I guess that's to be seen on the application of when this thing gets passed over, but this is a significant change. So the legislature now is restoring the double pay that they wanted to take away.
I think they're back on. No?
No. Maybe. Do you think it was a typo, or do you think they went back to change this because of public pressure?
Because of public pressure. Francisco Salas again says, how are they going to pay the hazardous pay? Where's the money coming from? All I know is my first responders, because I pay taxes, they can get double pay.
Well, they were supposed to have been getting double pay since it began, on whenever was that, March 15 or something. But as we understand from GovGuam employees working on the front lines of this,
They got 10%.
only 10% hazard pay.
Yeah.
I don't
So
even think they're getting that
hopefully
differential.
we get to retro.
They have to, or else they'll be able to sue GovGuam for that money. This is a pay issue. And currently under the law, they're supposed to get double pay. What did they go into a break for?
They need to find it.
Find what?
Find the bill they're gonna talk about.
Amanda's lunch bell? I took a nap, y'all. That's why I was not on this thing. Like, at when did you start?
Not too long.
3:20 or something.
Mm-hmm.
They had to wake me up and everything.
Oh, my girl. Hi, Johnny girl.
Hi, Johnny girl.
We get to.
Let's see. Denise Pangilinan says because Nelson doesn't have her ish together. Let's see. Responding to Francisco Salas, who asked, where's that money coming from? Rap Flores says, my thoughts exactly, coming from the private sector. Martina Cruz recommended proofreader during the session, just like the translator set up on KUAM News. There's a translator?
For the hearing impaired?
I guess so. Is that the correct terminology, hearing impaired?
I believe so.
And Josephine Crisosimo says, why is everything only about the government? How about us private sectors whom are essential workers?
So they were discussing that at the beginning of this bill. This is a resurrected bill. This is the Lazarus bill of the Guam legislature. They discussed this as the very first bill on Thursday. They sent it to the voting file. Now they've resurrected it to change this one section. But before they ended discussion on Thursday, one of the things that they made sure to nix out of the bill was in its application to private sector workers. And I think it was Regine Lee.
That nixed it?
Either she nixed it or she was the one who gave the reason for it. And because I distinctly remember her saying that, doing something like this would need a hearing, and we would need to know what the full impact would be with the private sector and stuff like that. And so I don't know if it was her amendment, but I remember her speaking about it. But there was a concern, like if they were going to require private sector employers to pay out at double rate or pay a hazard pay or whatever, that the employers wouldn't be able to afford it. And then there was the talk about, well, what if the government of Guam would just cover that cost and pay those costs to the private sector employees? But the legislature decided that that would be too difficult at the time, and so they nixed it. So this is just applying to Guam employees. I think there's also a discussion about whether it would apply to private sector employees contracted with the government of Guam. I don't think that passed either.
Soledad Charcalo. Johnny, please give Talina your copy.
Oh, yeah. I think she called for the recess so that she could see what the amendment is. It's her own amendment, too. Let's read. While we're waiting for the legislature to get its act together, let's read their contracts. So you all know where your money is going with the Guam legislature. On Thursday, we read you their staffing pattern.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun.
They can't blame only the governor to cut costs, because they need to cut costs as well.
The legislature?
Yeah. There's a lot of fat that can be cut there.
There's a lot.
I know it.
There's a lot, Chalu. The office of Senadora Amanda Shelton, they can start from there. Is this too easy? This is too easy. I'm sorry, guys. Too easy. Just like, never mind. Are you at my screen? All right. So, from October 1 to October 6, 2019, Will Castro paid a vendor named Hinatsa Law PC $2,500 to provide research, evaluation, and drafting of proposed law, policy, or position papers, assist with constituent support services, assistance with media and communication services. The contractor shall also provide training in order to develop the necessary internal capacity for a high-level public policy writing, executive writing, internal and external customer services, as well as constituent intake and case management. Wow, gee, sounds like something that we actually would pay. I'm so sorry, that's not Hinatsu, that's KB Consulting. Pardon me. All of that stuff that I said was what this contractor would do is KB Consulting, and it was from October 1, 2019 through March 31, 2020. And it's for $30,000. And as I was saying, all of those things that this contractor is supposed to do is all of those things that we, the taxpayers, pay Senator Will Castro to do because he's the senator. These are duties of a senator that he is contracting out for $30,000. Who is KB Consulting?
Never heard of them.
Okay.
Never. Search them up.
Yeah, can you?
Yeah.
It's a consultant, that's all we know.
Oh,
Central-
that's Kate Baltazar.
So Kate Baltazar was paid $30,000. I think she's the new host for the midday show on K57, right? $30,000 for a October, November, December, January, February, March, a 6-month period. Basically $60,000 per annum or more money than is paid to a senator to do this senator's work that the senator already is paid to do. Such BS. Central Operations, Hinatsa Law PC, $2,500 was paid for a 5-day period to serve as assistant legislative counsel and assist the legislative counsel in the performance of the duties of the legal bureau.
Why? Where was she?
I don't know, but $2,500, geez.
Where was the legal counsel?
Blue Ocean Law, oh, that was Julian to be legal counsel from January 2019 to September 2019. Yeah, that's fine. On top of Julian, again, Anna Juan Pat Borja as assistant legislative counsel for that same period. Okay, that's fine. Senator Regine Lee also paid Hinatsa Law from January 7th through September 30, 2019, $56,250. And I guess this is to be, well, conducting legal research, performing legal analysis, and providing legal guidance, drafting, reviewing, or analyzing bills, potential resolutions, etc., consulting with office staff, legislative employees. These are the duties and responsibilities of her own office, except for that legal, well, no, even legal research is supposed to be conducted
By legal.
by
There's a
senator
whole
staff.
list of legal people at the legislature pays all those. Remember, you read it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of legal staffer people.
This is wow. Okay,
They're back.
You're back? Okay,
Testing
let's-
con alas
that's
Lieutenant Guahan
kinda
is
quick.
back
We need to
from
go back on her.
recess.
Can you make it louder?
Does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? The Vice Speaker's amendment? Senator Sabina Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If I could just have the author of the amendment give the rationale for the amendment.
So you're asking,
Yes, it's a point of inquiry.
Vice Speaker, would you like to yield to that question?
Madam Speaker, it's very clear in the amendment. It's very clear in the amendment, the rationale.
Thank you. Senator Perez, you still have the floor.
Can she restate? So I guess the issue is hazard pay and Is there double time in this as well?
I'm sorry, Senator Perez.
Yeah, another point of, a follow-up question for the author of the amendment.
State your question.
Is double time, by proffering this amendment, is double time also included with the hazard pay?
Vice Speaker, would you like to yield to that? The question is, will double time be included in this measure?
Let me read the amendment, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding any provision of law, rule, or regulation, or executive order, the provisions of the Department of Administration Personnel Rules and Regulations 8.406 authorizing payment at double the regular rate of pay shall apply in addition to the COVID-19 public health emergency and shall be extended to employees eligible for COVID-19 hazardous pay. COVID-19 hazardous pay shall be calculated based on the regular rate of the employee.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Senator Perez, you still have the floor. Does that help?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Also, a follow-up question.
Please state your question.
What is the economic impact of this?
I-
What is the economic impact of this amendment?
What is the
The economic impact.
Vice Speaker? Would you like to yield to that question at this time?
Madam Speaker, in consultation with FEMA Public Assistant Labor Cost Reimbursements, in reference to FEMA Public Assistance Labor Cost Reimbursements, reimbursement of double the regular rate of premium pay is reimbursable through FEMA. Pay at double the regular rate in accordance with 8.406 natural disasters and other emergency conditions, Section C.2 of the Department of Administration Personnel Rules and Regulations is reimbursable because the written policy was established before the disaster and it meets the following criteria. Does not include a contingency clause that payment is subject to federal funding, is applied uniformly regardless of a presidential declaration, and has set non-discretionary criteria for when the applicant activates various pay types. And so, Madam Speaker, the economic impact is what we have to come up with when we submit our packet to FEMA. We don't know how many personnel are getting it. It can change as this evolves. We know that the apex is coming in June, so we don't know what kind of strain it's going to put on our people or the economy or community, but we do know that it is reimbursable.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Senator Perez, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to wish to speak on the amendment? Is there anyone else? Senator Therese, you are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This amendment changes the bill from what we had discussed the last time we were here in session. And so at that time, we had established, consistent with the governor, those 3 categories of pay specifically for COVID-19. And it was my understanding that was supposed to be the pay for personnel, and they were different categories because of the risk that these employees were facing. So this amendment would go back to, I think, the rules for typhoons, where they would get double pay and apply that double pay to this emergency as well. But it also adds the category pay on top of that double pay. And
Madam Speaker, I believe we are on the amendment.
Yes.
I do have another amendment that may touch light in what was referenced just 10 seconds
Thank you.
ago.
I'll take that as a point of information, Vice Speaker.
yes,
Thank you very much.
please. Otherwise, I
Senator-
have the floor, right, Madam
Yes,
Speaker?
yes, you
Thank
do.
you. the amendment is doing what I'm describing, and so that's why I'm trying to get my head around it, Madam Speaker, because I don't know, it clearly was not what was, I don't want to, I can't, know what's in the governor's mind, but it definitely was not what she requested. She requested that we take her category pay and we make it retroactive. That's what she asked the legislature to do. And but if we're adding category pay on top of double pay, I guess I'm confused, and I would just like to ask, if the double pay is reimbursable by FEMA, is the COVID-19 category pay, hazardous pay, as they've described it in this bill, is that also reimbursable by FEMA?
Thank you, Senator Chalayi. Vice Speaker, would you like to yield?
Madam Speaker, I know at this time for certain that double time pay is reimbursable
Thank
through FEMA.
Thank you.
The double time, but do we know the COVID-19 pay?
Madam Speaker, the original bill focuses on 10% hazardous pay, and the intent of that hazardous pay was to go towards the frontline personnel who do not receive hazardous pay, which was the CQA, Customs and Quarantine, DOE teachers who are responding to this crisis, our firefighters. That was the intent. Then an executive order came along with these categories. And so to align ourselves to ensure that the people that are responding to our coronavirus get paid what the governor promised them, we included those categories in the bill. Now, the governor, the executive branch, is tracking all the money. I don't know if the hazardous pay is reimbursable, and I don't know the impact of this category 25, 15, and 10%. But this is to align ourselves with the executive order to ensure that what the governor said, it is fulfilled.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Senator Therese, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So my understanding of double pay is that for prior emergencies, when an employee actually has to show up to work, is called to work after an emergency or during an emergency, then they're entitled, according to the personnel rules, to double pay. I don't have that in front of me, and if the author of the amendment does, I would just like the citation so I could read it for myself, but it's my understanding they're entitled to double pay during those circumstances. However, as you know, we have employees, I don't know, it's just a different situation, because I think double pay is going to be much higher than the incentive pay that the governor had lined up, the 10, 15, and 25. And so, of course, everybody would want double pay, but this amendment is going to add the 10, 15, and 25 on top of even the double pay. And I guess
That is a possibility, Madam Speaker.
I'll take that as a point of information, Vice Speaker.
I'm trying to find out from the hospital whether nurses get double pay. According to the director, she said not that she knows. And so it was my understanding, and otherwise, of course, I don't really have an objection to it, except that I don't want to end up with another disparity that was not intended. For example, if nurses are not entitled to double pay, and they are the, number one front line that we were intending to give the highest category, those nurses working at the hospital, they might end up getting only this 25% and not any double pay, and then it just, I guess that's my only concern. I mean, otherwise it's great to give out money, but I'm concerned that we're going to end up with a disparity that we are not intending. That's my concern, Madam Speaker. This is my first time to hear this, so I guess I'll leave it at that, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Chalayi. Anyone else on the amendment? Anyone else on the amendment?
Madam Speaker, just a point of inquiry for the retiring speaker.
I will go ahead and entertain you, Vice Speaker.
I did not
Yes.
pose any inquiry, Madam Speaker.
Yes, I
A point of
understand that.
inquiry from me
So,
to the retiring speaker.
Madam Vice Speaker, please, I will go ahead and entertain those who wish to speak on the amendment. If not on closing, I can go ahead and have you work the closing. If anybody else wanting to speak on this? Vice Speaker, you may close on your amendment. If not, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Vice Speaker, on the main bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just one last amendment that was given to us by legal to ensure that there's no conflict with the amendment that was proffered. Okay, colleagues, if you can pull it up, it's on line 21, page 2, and that reads, notwithstanding any provision of law, rule, or regulation, or executive order, in no event shall any employee be entitled to multiple hazardous differential rates of pay for the same period. In the event the employee is entitled to varying types or amounts of hazardous differential pay, the highest authorized differential rate shall be used.
For those who are trying to look for the document, it is FA B326 TCN L21P2.
And so, Madam Speaker, from my understanding, there was a concern that we issue, since the police perhaps receive 10% hazardous pay, on top of this bill, they would receive another 10%, if that was their category. However, the intent of the bill was to get hazardous pay out to those who were not receiving hazardous pay. And then the executive order came into place to increase hazardous pay by categories. And so, just to make sure that, there's continuity, we continue to move forward to ensure that you will receive the greater rate of pay whichever category you fall under. So if you fall under category 1 and you're currently receiving 10% hazardous pay, you will get 25% hazardous pay. If you fall under category 1 and you're already receiving 10% hazardous pay, you will get 25%. You will not get 35%, if that is clear. Okay.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Anyone else on the amendment? Anyone wishing to speak on the amendment? If not, are there any objections? Are there any objections? Senator Marsh, do you have an inquiry?
Seduis Masi. Several of us are still looking for the amendment, just so that we're clear.
I can barely hear you, Sen.
Several of us are still looking for the amendment. We just want to be able to see it before making the final decision.
Again, it is FA B326 TCN L21P2.
Madam Speaker.
So she said several of us are still
Senator
looking
Mary
for
Torres on the amendment.
While
the
we
document.
are waiting, I
Is
just want to speak in
It's
support
on.
of this
It's on.
amendment. And
Yeah.
I think
The
that
volume?
this is the sort of
Yeah.
measure that makes it absolutely clear
It-
that there's
what I wonder is whether, no, it's not on.
Maybe I should turn on my phone.
I don't know.
Let me see. Holy moly. My Lanta.
sometimes convoluted types of tiers. It's important to have that
Yeah.
underlying statement
I
that
hear things.
only one shall prevail and not a
Hello.
a
Prim?
mix of
Our
different
mics?
things. So I just rise in support. Just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Senator Torres.
Can
Anyone
you, I
else
guess,
on the amendment?
turn the TV back on then and turn off her mics?
Are there any objections? Senator, there's an objection, or would you like to speak? I will recognize you, Senator Therese, on the amendment.
I support this amendment. This amendment limits the multiple hazard hazardous differential rates, right? And you can only pick one, I guess, for the new one or the old one. And so that would be good, because then those who are not currently entitled to hazardous would be getting hazardous. I just, I think this has no impact on any other types of pay you might be getting, night differential or any, and obviously the double pay. And so I support this amendment, but I just don't think it takes care of still that double pay for some and not all of the employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Chalabi. Anyone else wishing to speak on the amendment? Are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none, motion carries. And anyone, I apologize, Vice Speaker, on the motion to, Minority Leader, did you want to speak on the main motion, on the motion as amended?
Actually, Madam Speaker, I'm speaking on the bill as in its entirety. It was brought back
Yes,
to
it
the
was.
session floor. So if I may, I just have a question to ask to ensure that what we received this morning was the amendments intact that we made on Thursday. And I wanted to ask the author of the bill if the section on 32120.1, hazardous pay in support of state emergency in response to novel coronavirus, COVID-19, and going down from 1 all the way down to 2, where it's showing that $150 a month shall be given to the National Guard. Is that still part of the legislation, or that was already taken out?
Vice Speaker, would you like to yield?
Madam Speaker, if you just give me a quick recess.
Sure. We are in a moment's recess.
For people, shot number 24. Is our mics hot? That's shot number 24 if you're just joining us.
She doesn't know?
I actually didn't even hear Tello's question. What was your question?
Is the National Guard $150 a month still in there? Because remember, they took it out.
Oh, I know where she's getting at with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see what unfolds as a result of that. But the Vice Speaker is now at Senator Taidugui's desk. They are not social distancing right now. But I guess answering her question, I don't know why they had to recess to answer this question. It should have just been answered, or they should have just let it play out in front of everybody. That's a common criticism that's coming across in the comments, is people want to hear what business is going on when these microphones are shut off. Tatlu recess, says Chad George. Chad George also says, these senators all fighting, trying to compare who is doing more and better for the people of Guam. So ridiculous. Work together and help the people and our island get through this pandemic. You know who I really admire throughout this whole session are Pito Terlahi and Luis Muña.
They're so quiet?
They have not said anything. Now, maybe for Luis Muña, that's more of like, she doesn't know what to say. But like, I bet you Pito is like, hurry up, people. Hurry up. Hurry up. Amy Jackson says, she's asking, you want to use my grandma's glasses, or are yours broken? Let's go back to senatorial contracts. We left off at Hinatsa law for the office of Senator Regine Lee. Now there is a $9,000 contract from May 1, 2019 to July 31, 2019. That's a May, June, July. It's a 3-month period. The office of Senator Will Castro for James Petit. I believe he's the former principal at Southern High. And the same stuff. It's so I guess this is more of a personnel services contract where James Petit is like a worker, but just as a contractor and not as a whatever. So okay, that's fine. Office of Senator Tello Taitigui from June through September 2019, June, July, August, September, 4-month period, $2,000 for multimedia content. Okay, that's fine. That's for Myung Jun Hong. Central Operations, another contract to Hinata Law. Who is this Hinata Law? Assistant Legislative Counsel providing legislative review, $2,500 for a 5-day period. My goodness, what is going on with that? $132,000, huh? The Legislative Council, the one who the senators are always having to wait for, Law Office of Anna Wampat Borja, PC, for 1 year, $132,000 to Legislative Council. Jim Moylan. Well, you can say Jim Moylan's cheap or Bobby Stringy's crazy. This is a $19,000 contract for Bobby Stringy to work for a 10-month period for only $19,000 to do legislative work. Good job there, Jim Moylan, on saving money for the people of Guam. Office of Senator Jim Moylan for the same period, 10 months. Man, Jim Moylan is pretty cheap. I do not want to work for him. $13,500 to Ralph Scambaluri for working for a 10-month period.
He actually bought us breakfast or lunch.
We need to buy that guy lunch because he ain't getting paid much. Oh, here's another one. The same Kate Baltasar one. KB Consulting, Office of Senator Will Castro, another $30,000 for a. So basically, Kate Baltasar got 60 grand, more than the senator did that she was working for to do legislative work.
But what has he done? What bills and legislative work has Will Castro introduced?
I am not aware of what delegate nominee Will Castro has done for the people of Guam.
Are you being political right now?
I'm being facetious, completely facetious on his title. Delegate nominee William Castro. So
I don't know who's nominee, who's delegate, but it sure isn't mine.
Tello Taitigui, another contract to Myung Hong for the same multimedia stuff. It is for a 1-year period, $6,000. Boy, Tello's cheap too, huh? Well, I guess that's good for the taxpayers. Will Castro to Niche Creatives for a November, December, January, February, March, a 5-month period, $2,500 for web design services, legislative work, etc. Okay, that's fine. Oh, here. So it wasn't just $19,000 for Bobby Stringy. There's an additional $30,000. And, oh, I'm sorry, it's not an additional $30,000. He just started paying Bobby more in the new fiscal year. So Jim Moylan basically added 10 grand to the measly salary he was giving to Bobby Shree. Poor Bobby. We need to buy him lunch too. He even increased Ralph Scambaluri's pay by $5,000 to $18,000 a year. Freaking Jim Moylan is cheap, man. Speaker Tina Mooney Barnes has a contract to Ed Alvarez for a 10-month period for $37,500 for legal stuff. Okay, that's fine. Here is where the senators lease their office spaces. So every senator gets a stipend for office space, and if they are not situated inside the Guam Congress building, then they need to go get an office somewhere, right? So Senator Clint Rigel rents from DNA Inc., $72,000, so what is that, $6,000 a month. Tello Taitigui also is at DNA Inc., $48,000 a year. Senator Mary Torres at DNA, 48,000. Senator Jim Moylan at DNA, 48,000. Senator Talina Nelson at Addis Trust and Investment, 72,000. Senator Therese Terlahi, Addis Trust and Investment, 72,000. Senator Louise Munia, Addis Trust and Investment for a 2-month period, $4,000. Senator Will Castro at MVP Enterprises, $48,000. Pito Terlahi at Addis Trust and Investment, $72,000. Joe Sanagostine, Randcare Inc., $72,000. He has a second suite in that same building at Randcare Inc. for $72,000 for the Office of Finance and Budget. Senator Louise Munia for the remainder of that fiscal year, $44,000 at MVP Enterprises, and Senator Sabina Perez at the Terlahi Building, $72,000. Those are all the contracts, huh? And they're still not off of. Are they still not off of the thing? Still on recess?
We're still looking for the paper.
Let's go to their travel then. Oh goodness, look at all that travel. The travelers are Speaker Tina Munoz Barnes, Vice Speaker Talina Nelson, Senator Regine Lee, Senator Amanda Shelton, and Senator Kelly Taitano and Senator Tello Taidewi. Let's see. Gosh, these are a lot of documents to look through. Oh, these are her tickets. Where can we see, where do you see if it's first class or whatever?
Oh, no.
Does it say? I guess the seat number, right? 20C is economy for sure. Let's just look at their tickets. Oh, there sure are a lot of documents.
They all went, right?
Looks like it. Now this says Senator Mary Torres traveled, but maybe she paid for her own way. This is just too much to look through. Economy seats. Wait, Portland to Denver at seat 15, oh, that's economy. Even middle economy, not even aisle. Good for you, Speaker. Good for you. You're not Ralph Torresing the people of Guam with your first class tickets. Oh, she went to Osaka. I love Osaka. These are a lot of documents to go through. I guess we should probably make this a whole other like story on its own, huh? The travel thing. It didn't look like that much travel though. So maybe we don't care. Oh well. They're still not back from session, for crying out loud. And this was what? What are they looking for again? They're still on the hazard pay bill, right?
Yeah, they're looking for the amendment.
Oh, yeah. They're looking for the personnel rules and regulations, I think.
They're trying to stretch it for 5.
So look at Clint Ridgell.
So we can go
Clint Ridgell and Pito Terlahi are probably the most patient senators there. They're just sitting at their chairs, They're just paying attention. They're not saying anything. But you know, in their heads, they're like, hurry the hell up. Shut up, Kelly. That's what they're thinking in their heads.
Bob's on.
Richard Leon says Jim Moylan isn't cheap. He's just paying for their party connections and familiar name, politics handbook name. Denise Legaspi says the engineering staff go from room to room fixing whatever is broken. What building is that? Janice Wong asks, how much exposure happens with hotel staff? How much does Guam do to shield private sector from exposure? Good questions. The Joint Information Center will not pick up the phone to answer these questions. Rap Flores says there is an emergency session because they forgot what they said on last session. Waste of time. I agree with Lee Weber's article that was posted on today's Guam Daily Post. Read it because he's on point. Well, let's go to that. What is it? Postguam.com.
Post Lee Weber. His own is on the Post.
Yeah, he doesn't write for the PDN anymore because I think Rendrati stole his turkey.
Ate it.
Ate his turkey. Featured columnist, right? Granny Hall says, Kelly getting her steps in. One of those fruit flies went into my nose and I can feel it making its way between
gross.
my nasal cavity and my throat. They're coming back.
Mina 35 na las Laturangguahan is back from recess. On the amendment, Senator Tello Taitagui I understand you have an amendment to proffer.
Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, after speaking with my colleagues and the author of the amendment, we're going to strike out Section 2. This is, okay. On Section 32120.1, and if you scroll down to the section number 2, any member of the National Guard activated under state active duty, we strike out that whole Section 2, or not section, I'm sorry, number 2, and strike that out. Madam Speaker, most of us thought that this was already taken out on Thursday. And as we reviewed this morning, the legislation, it wasn't taken out. And if anything, Madam Speaker, the $150 a month to the National Guard, most likely, almost guaranteed, this is not refundable through either FEMA or the federal government. So, and then I was also brought to my attention that in situations like this, whenever a guardsman is put into a situation that's hazardous or dangerous, they do have some kind of hazardous pay already given to them. So basically, Madam Speaker, it's just to strike out number 2. And Madam Speaker, this would also be very consistent with the striking out of Section 3, which also talks about the National Guard and hazardous pay.
Thank you. I was just informed by the clerk the sentiments you're sharing right now. So to be clear, I will again accept that amendment to delete section,
Or number 2.
I mean, line item 2,
Yes.
sub item 2, starting on page 2, line 25. Are there anyone wishing to speak on that amendment? Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Senator, Minority Leader Titagui. Vice Speaker, on the motion to place.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to move Bill number 326-35 into the, as substituted into the third reading voting file.
On that motion, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, no objections, motion carries. Vice 334. Senator Regine Lee? Senator Regine Lee? Because I'm 334. Senator Regine? Colleagues, I was informed by our clerk that we still have 340, 334, and 335 in that perspective on the agenda.
I'll just read the one here.
From our audience?
Colleagues, I was informed by... inclusive of 313 and 331.
Oh, yeah, you can hear it. You can hear it.
On the agenda. Moments recess.
Yeah, they're in recess.
They're in recess again?
Turn off our mics and turn on the TV.
They're in recess again.
They're in recess. It's 25.
Moments recess.
We
There.
gotta figure out how we can hear this session and speak, you know what I mean? And be able to speak during it.
Oh, our mics are hot.
And there you go.
Prem, can you come back to us?
Yep.
So they really recessed?
Yeah.
What did they say? They're 340 or 334?
334.
They're on 334, so that's the dictator bill.
Yeah.
So that is what they're gonna talk about now.
Yeah.
So why did they recess?
I guess you're for it, I'm sure.
Oh, here's what we're waiting for, people. Bill 334. You know what we're gonna do is let's exit out of this this live stream and we'll restart the live stream while they're in recess, and rename the live stream the Dictator Act.
Okay.
Yeah. So Candidland, we're gonna exit. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. We're gonna restart the live stream.